Okay, there's a series, a Goosebumps series, that is called Horrorland, and it's made of books that are so each book has a number of the Horrorland series, but they all kind of stand alone and they all have their own plots within them. So this one is called Revenge of the Living Dummy. There are two books before it in this private owned just Living Dummy books, but you can still read them alone as the Horrorland series, even though each book is about a different one. Like the second one, I believe, is about two children who are involved with the ocean, and I think the next one is about some kid who like ate a chemical he's not supposed to, and weird stuff happened. But I like this series, so I'll read this one. I believe there are 12 books. So how it goes is that the book itself has the story of the people in this one who are dealing with the living dummy. And then at the end, they get an invitation to go to a Horrorland theme park where scary stuff happens. And that's what makes this series special, is that the story stands alone and then the kids go to Horrorland. Same thing with the next book, the story stands alone and then those kids go to Horrorland, they meet these kids. So, just to avoid confusion. So, Goosebumps Horrorland, Revenge of the Living Dummy, and the series is by R.L. Stine. Chapter 1. You may wonder why my best friend Molly Malloy, and I were in the old graveyard late at night. I shivered as I thought about what we were doing. Wind howled through the trees, and pale streaks of lightning cracked the sky. Hurry, Molly, I whispered, hugging myself as the moon disappeared behind the clouds. It's going to storm. I am hurrying, Brittany, Molly said, but the ground, it's really hard. We were digging a grave. We took turns. One of us shoveled while the other stood lookout. I felt cold raindrops on my forehead. I kept my eyes on the low picket fence near the street. Nothing moved. The only sounds were the scrape of the shovel in the dirt and a drumroll of thunder, deep but far away. Across from me, an old gravestone made a creaking sound as it tilted in the wind. I sucked in my breath. I suddenly pictured the old stone toppling over, and someone crawling out from the grave beneath it. Okay, I have a wild imagination. Everyone knows that about me. My mom says I'll either be a writer or a crazy person. She thinks that's really funny. Sometimes having a strong imagination is a good thing, and sometimes it just makes things more scary, like tonight. Molly stopped shoveling to push the hair out of her eyes. Raindrops pattered on the blanket of dead leaves on the ground. Brittany, does this look deep enough? She asked in a hoarse whisper. I glanced at the glass coffin on the ground. Keep digging. We have to totally cover it, I said. I turned back to the street. It was late and the neighborhood stood dark and still. But what if someone drove by and saw us? How could we ever explain the grave we were digging? How could we explain why we were there? Molly groaned and dug the shovel blade into the dirt. The dead leaves crackled. I held my breath and listened. Footsteps. Someone creeping quickly through the leaves toward us. Molly, I whispered. Then I saw them, huddled low, moving in a line. Raccoons, a pack of them, little eyes glowing. The black fur on their faces made the little creatures look like they were wearing masks. They froze when they saw us, and then stood up taller. Do raccoons ever attack? These raccoons looked really hungry. I imagined them stampeding Molly and me, swarming us, clawing and biting. A bright flash of lightning brought them into clear focus. They were staring at the little glass coffin. Did they think there was food inside? The clap of thunder, closer now, startled them. The leader turned and scuttled away over the leaves. The others followed. I shivered and wiped rain off my forehead. Molly handed me the shovel. Your turn, she said. It's almost finished. The wooden handle scratched my hand. I kicked dirt off the blade and stepped up to the shallow hole. No one will ever find it here, I said. Once we bury the evil thing, we'll be safe from it. Molly didn't answer. I had the sudden feeling something was wrong. I turned and saw Molly staring with her mouth open, staring at the tall gravestone next to us. She pointed. Britt. And then I heard the old stone creak and saw the pale hand slowly reaching out from the grave. No time to move, no time to scream. I stood frozen and watched the hand wrap its cold, bony fingers around my ankle. and then I started to scream. Chapter 2. 2 weeks earlier, I had other things on my mind. I wasn't thinking about the old graveyard down the street. I had bigger problems. Well, one big problem, and his name was Ethan. Ethan is my cousin, and it isn't nice to hate your cousin, so let's just say he isn't one of my favorite people on this planet. I like to make lists, and if I made a list of my top 5,000 favorite people in the world, my cousin Ethan wouldn't be on it. Get what I'm saying? It was almost dinner time on a Friday night, and I was perched on the edge of my bed in the new bedroom. No, on the edge of the bed in my new bedroom. Why did I have a new bedroom? Because Mom and Dad kicked me out of my awesome room in the attic to make room for guess who? Ethan. So now I had to sleep in Mom's sewing room, and the sewing machine was still against the wall. So how much room did I have? Try not much. I was talking on my cell to Molly. Molly is maybe the only person who understands what a pain Ethan is, because she's met him. And she had 2 bruised knees to prove it. Whoever told Ethan that kicking people is funny? Molly and I are like sisters. If you mention Molly Malloy, you have to mention me, Brittany Crosby. 2. We are both 12 and we live on the same block, and we've always been in the same class since 3rd grade. We both like to draw and paint. We both like to make lists of everything. We are always finishing each other's sentences like we have one brain. Molly is a little taller than me and more into sports. We both have coppery hair, although hers is lighter and curlier, and we both have brown eyes. I'm the funny one. It's hard to make Molly laugh. I think she's more serious than me because her parents split up and she lives with her dad. He travels a lot and he's kind of a flake, so she feels like she has to be the grown-up in the house. Obviously, I've thought about it a lot. I once made a list of my good qualities and my bad qualities, and one of my good qualities is that I really try to understand my friends. I can't come over now, I told Molly. That brat Ethan will be here any minute. Dad went to the bus station to pick him up. Molly groaned into the phone. Maybe you'll get lucky. Maybe he missed the bus. Why is he coming to stay with you anyway? His parents had to go away or something, I said. He's even coming to our school. I think he's in 3rd grade. He's such a sicko, Molly said. Maybe you should move over here till he leaves. I rolled my eyes, like my mom would go for that. She knows you hate him, Molly said. I'm supposed to feel sorry for Ethan because he's had such a tough life, I said. You know, his parents were both sick for a long time and he didn't pay any attention to him. Molly shook her head. Yeah, I remember. I groaned. So Mom and Dad say I have to take good care of him. Every 10 minutes they remind me I have to be nice to him. Hello, Molly said. Do they know he kicks people when the grown-ups aren't looking? Do they know how he kept trying to trip you and make you fall down the stairs? Did you tell them he tricked you into eating a sandwich that had dead bugs in it? He's totally bratty, but they don't believe me, I said. Last time Ethan stayed here, he started messing with my computer, and he deleted my whole term paper. He said it was an accident, then he burst out laughing. Molly groaned again. What a creep. Molly, what am I going to do? I wailed. He's coming to live with us for weeks. Molly was silent for a moment. Then she said softly, Face it, Brittany, your life is over. Oh! I let out a cry as I heard a deafening crash from downstairs. I nearly dropped the phone. Was Ethan here already? Chapter 3. I hurried into the kitchen and saw Mom bent over, picking pieces of china off the floor. I can't believe I dropped that plate, she said, shaking her head. Mom has short, dark brown hair with a streak of white in the front. She is small and skinny and totally high energy. And she's kind of pretty, except for her black-framed glasses make her look like a philosophy professor or something. She's always in a hurry, and she always drops things, and then she says, I can't believe I dropped that. Maybe you're nervous about Ethan, I said, bending to pick up a jagged piece of china. I know I am. Hey, she pinched my cheek. I don't think she meant to hurt me, but she pinched too hard. I'm the only person in the world she pinches. I don't really get it. Good attitude, remember? She said, good attitude at all times. You promised. I had my fingers crossed, I said. How could I have a good attitude? The last time Ethan visited, we got into an actual fist fight. Can you imagine? Quiet little Brittany Crosby giving her cousin a bloody nose and making him cry in front of all her friends. That's not like me at all, but he just makes me crazy. Give Ethan a chance, Mom said, brushing off the front of her jeans. She wears tight designer jeans, and she looks pretty good in them. She's so small we can almost share clothes. Weird. He's had a lot of problems, Mom said, and now his parents have left him for who knows how long. He's not bad, he just acts out because he's lonely. Yeah, right. I heard a car door slam, then Dad's voice in the garage. "They're here," Mom said. "Remember, Brittany, you've got to be the grown-up in the situation. Get off to a good start with Ethan and everything will be fine." "I'm going to try, really," I said, and I meant it. The door from the garage swung open. Dad stepped into the kitchen, carrying Ethan's two suitcases. "Our new family member has arrived," he said. Ethan came bouncing in behind him, a big grin on his face. Ethan looks like a sweet little boy. He is short and pale and very blond. He has bright blue eyes and a cute, pointed little chin. He wore a gray hoodie over baggy jeans. And what was that thing slumped over his shoulder? I squinted at it. A grinning ventriloquist dummy. "Hi, Aunt Roz," Ethan said. Mom shook a finger at the dummy. "Ethan, what is that?" He pulled the dummy off his shoulder and held it up. It had an ugly face with a painted blue eyes, a chipped lower lip, and an awful grin. "This is Mr. Bad Boy," Ethan said. "Mr. Bad Boy is my friend." Totally pitiful, I thought. But I put a smile on my face and said, "Hey, Ethan." Ethan came running over to me, holding the dummy in front of him. "Mr. Bad Boy," he said, "say hi to my cousin Brittany." I saw it coming, but I couldn't move in time. The dummy's wooden hand swung up fast and came down hard and clonk slammed me in the forehead. Chapter 4. Whoa! A sharp pain shot through my head. I pressed my hands against my throbbing temples, trying to push the pain away. "Be careful with that thing," Dad scolded Ethan. "It wasn't my fault," Ethan cried, backing away from him. "Mr. Bad Boy did it." Here we go again, I thought. Ethan moved the dummy's mouth up and down. "I'm a bad boy," the dummy said in a shrill baby voice. Mom turned and hurried to the fridge. "We'd better put some ice on it, Britt," she said. "You're going to have a bump." I glared at Ethan. Was it an accident? "Sometimes Mr. Bad Boy doesn't know his own strength," Ethan said. "Ethan, how about saying you're sorry?" Dad said. "Mr. Bad Boy is very sorry," said Ethan. I pushed past him and headed to the door. "Forget the ice," I said, rubbing my forehead. "I'm going over to Molly's." Mom hurried after me. She stopped me in the front hall. "Take Ethan with you," she said in a whisper. "Mom, please." "No," I said. Mom put both hands on my shoulders and narrowed her eyes at me through her glasses. "Brittany, he just got here. Don't be rude. Remember what I said about getting off to a good start?" "He already gave me a bruise," I cried. But I could see she meant business. I sighed. Okay. I saw Ethan near the kitchen door, and I called to him. "Want to come over to Molly's?" "Excellent," Ethan replied. "I'll bring Mr. Bad Boy." Thrills, I thought. We stepped out into a cool, windy evening. The sun had started to dip behind the trees, sending long shadows across the grass. Molly lives three houses down on the other side of the street. A short walk, but Ethan kept dancing around me, sticking his foot out, trying to trip me. "Give me a break," I pleaded. He just giggled in reply. He has a phony hyena giggle that could drive anyone crazy. I rang the bell, and a few seconds later, Molly came to the door. She was wearing faded jeans and a yellow t-shirt with the words "Mumba Rules" and red across the front. Her dad always brings her t-shirts from the weird places he visits. Don't ask me where on earth Mumba is. She let out a groan when she saw Ethan. "Shake hands with Mr. Bad Boy," Ethan told her. He stuck out the dummy's wooden hand. "Mr. Bad Boy, this is Molly, Brittany's geeky friend." Nice. Molly frowned at the dummy and said, "He's almost as ugly as you are, Ethan." Good one. I laughed and slapped her a high five. "I'm a bad boy," the dummy said. "Perfect," Molly muttered. She led us down the hall to her room. "Dad just got back this morning from one of his crazy trips," she said. "Mumba. It's an island. He's totally pumped. I guess he found some strange dolls there." Professor Malloy is kind of famous. He works for museums. He says he's a folklore expert. He travels all over the world and brings back ugly, evil-looking dolls and ancient toys and voodoo stuff and skulls and things. He keeps some of it on display up in his attic. He calls it his Museum of the Weird. He always wants to show it off, but Molly and I don't like to go up there. It totally creeps us out. Ethan put his mouth to my ear and burped really loudly. I jerked away from him. "Ethan, that's not funny." He giggled. "It's a riot." We turned the corner to Molly's room and bumped into Mr. Malloy. He's big and tall, with a big belly that hangs over his pants. He always wears baggy khakis that are all wrinkled and stained and sloppy white shirts. His dark brown hair is long and wild. He has a great smile, a big booming laugh that shakes his belly, and deep blue eyes that just stare. They don't blink when you talk to him. He likes to sing in a funny deep voice, and he's always trying to scare Molly and me with his weird stories. My dad calls him Mr. Wildman Malloy. He said hi to me, then turned his gaze on Ethan. I remember you, he said. Brittany's cousin, and what do we have here? He lifted Mr. Bad Boy off Ethan's shoulder and held the dummy up to study it. Interesting. Interesting. Mr. Malloy examined the wooden head carefully. He ran his finger over the chipped bottom lip. Then he reached a hand beneath Mr. Bad Boy's shirt and made the mouth snap up and down. Interesting dummy, he said. Ethan, where did this guy come from? Ethan shrugged. My dad found him. I don't know where. I named him Mr. Bad Boy because he's a really bad dude. Mr. Malloy chuckled. Interesting. He rubbed his hand over the dummy's painted brown hair. Why does it look so familiar? I could swear I've seen this dummy somewhere before. He handed Mr. Bad Boy back to Ethan. I have some books on ventriloquism. Maybe you'd like to borrow one. I don't have to talk for him, Ethan said. Mr. Bad Boy talks for himself. Molly and I looked at each other. We both rolled our eyes. Yeah, sure, I muttered. Come upstairs, Mr. Malloy said. I've got something very interesting to show you guys. Something I just brought back from Mumba. Maybe later, Dad, Molly said. We don't really want... Mr. Malloy tugged Molly toward the stairs. Come on up to the attic. You won't be sorry, he said with a wide, devilish grin. You want to stare into the face of pure evil, don't you? Chapter 5. Ethan's eyes flashed with excitement. Cool, he said. We followed Mr. Malloy up to his attic museum. The stairs were narrow and steep and creaked and groaned under our footsteps. Whenever I come up here, I feel as if I'm stepping into a haunted house. For one thing, it's very dark and shadowy. Mr. Malloy says that bright light will damage some of his displays. He keeps everything in glass showcases. It's all so creepy and weird. As you walk past the glass cases, dozens of eyes stare back at you. Cool, check this out, Ethan cried. He pointed to a case. I squinted in the dim light. 6 snakeheads, their jaws wide open. Disgusting. Mr. Malloy stepped up beside Ethan. Those snakeheads were used for gambling, he said. Just like dice. You hold them between your hands and shake them, then toss them onto the floor. Want to try it? No thanks, Molly said quickly. She pulled her dad away. Ethan looked disappointed. He held Mr. Bad Boy up and showed him the snakeheads. A long, skinny animal skull with 2 rows of pointed teeth grinned at me from the next case. I hurried past it. And the next case, too. It contained 2 little blue dolls with long blonde hair. Their faces were all twisted as if they were crying. In the next case, a pile of black fur. I looked closer. No, a stuffed animal, with a tiny mouse caught between its curled fangs. Molly says the attic gives her bad dreams. I don't know how she can fall asleep downstairs knowing that all these horrible creatures are right above her head. Over here, guys, Mr. Malloy called. Here's the new one you've got to check out. The 3 of us stepped around the case and gazed down through the glass. Oh, sick, I moaned. I felt my stomach lurch. Totally sick, Molly murmured. Is that a real shrunken head? Ethan asked. Mr. Malloy nodded. I've never seen anything like it in all my travels, he said. Its body is carved of wood, and it has an actual human head attached to the shoulders. I took a deep breath and gazed down at it. It was about 12 inches tall. The face was shriveled like an old prune and was a vomit green color. There were tiny slits where the eyes had once been. Twin wisps of black hair stood straight up from its scalp. Awesome, Ethan said. Can I hold it? I don't think so, Mr. Malloy replied. When I tell you the story of this doll, I don't think you'll want to come anywhere near it. He chuckled as if he had just told a good joke. Dad, this is really gross, Molly said, shaking her head. She turned her back to the case. You're not going to keep it here, are you? Let me tell you the story, Mr. Malloy said. The doll is called a mind stealer. The legend goes that if you touch it, you are doomed. Its eyes will open and glow. You will hear a loud, painful buzz, and it will steal your mind right out of your head. My mouth suddenly felt dry. I wanted to stop staring at the ugly thing, but I couldn't take my eyes off it. They say the doll has already claimed 20 minds, Mr. Malloy said. 20 poor victims who are left brainless, empty blanks. I felt a chill run down the back of my neck. Ethan giggled, but I could tell he was frightened too. Molly kept her back to the display case. She tossed her coppery hair back over one shoulder. Can we go now? She asked. I couldn't help myself. I leaned down to get a closer look at the doll. I stared at the tiny shriveled head. It was a little smaller than a softball, but it had once been alive. It had once been a live human being. Was it a man or a woman? I lowered my face to the glass and let out a cry as the doll whispered, "How about a kiss, babe?" Chapter 6. Startled, I stumbled back and nearly knocked Molly over. Mr. Malloy laughed. "Good one, Ethan," he said. Ethan grinned at me. "I'm a pretty good ventriloquist," he said. "I gotcha, Brittany." He did a fast tap dance and ended it by stomping hard on my foot. "Ethan, you're so not funny," I cried. I could feel my face turning hot. I knew I was blushing. How embarrassing to fall for that trick. Molly turned to her dad. "Do you really believe that mind-stealing stuff?" she asked. He scratched his head. "I take all these legends seriously," he said. "The legends tell a lot about people and their beliefs." "Yes or no," Molly asked. "Do you think it can steal minds or not?" Her dad was silent for a moment. Then he said, "Yes, I guess I do believe it." Molly's mouth dropped open. "Dad, if you believe this awful doll is so dangerous, how could you keep it in our house?" "It's under triple thick glass," Mr. Malloy replied. "That should make it safe." "But Dad, I'm still studying it," he told her. "I've got to call in to some experts. There are people who know a lot more about the doll than I do. I'm waiting to hear from them. In the meantime, I believe the triple thick glass will make sure that—" Before he could finish, that brat Ethan cried, "Brittany, you're blocking my view!" And he bumped me hard from behind into the doll case. As my forehead hit the glass, I saw the doll bounce. Then I heard a loud buzz. I gasped. "Oh no, my mind." Chapter 7. Whoa, wait, I heard the buzz again. My brain whirred. It took me so long to realize the doll wasn't buzzing. The sound came from my cell phone. I let out a sigh of relief. It was only my wild imagination going berserk again. I pulled the phone from my pocket and flipped it open. A text message from Mom. "Dinner almost ready. Come home soon." I told Molly and Mr. Malloy we had to leave. Ethan started whining that he didn't want to go. He wanted to stay and check out the other weird dolls and objects, but I was happy to get out of there. The Mind Stealer doll was too creepy to think about, and Mr. Malloy admitted he didn't even know if it was safe to keep in the house. I knew I'd have nightmares about it. When we got home, Mom was going crazy in the kitchen with 2 pots steaming on the stove and a chicken roasting in the oven. She blew a strand of her hair off her forehead and smiled at Ethan. "I'm making my famous roast chicken in honor of your arrival tonight," she said. "Not quite ready." She turned to me. "Why don't you go up to Ethan's room and bring down the rest of your junk?" Ethan gave me a hard tug that almost knocked me over. "Come upstairs, fat face. I want to show you my comedy act with Mr. Bad Boy." "Fat face?" I cried. "Don't call me fat face, butt breath." He giggled. "Stop it," Mom said. She lifted a pot lid and ducked back as steam poured up. "Name-calling isn't funny." "Yeah, right. Don't call me names, you moron," Ethan said to me. He tried to jam his elbow into my ribs, but I dodged away. "Please, go upstairs," Mom said. Let Ethan show you his comedy act." "Mom, give me a break," I moaned. "That dummy is so totally lame." Mom dropped the lid back on the pot and pulled me to the kitchen door. "Go up there with him, Britt. He wants to share something with you. That's a good thing." "But Mom," and don't make fun of the dummy, she whispered. "Poor Ethan obviously needs a friend to talk to, so he made one up. Go up to his room and be nice to him." I let out an exasperated sigh, but then I forced a smile to my face. "Okay, Ethan," I said. "Let's do it." He let out a cheer and went running up the attic stairs. The dummy's wooden head clonked on each stair as Ethan dragged it by the arm. I glanced around the attic, my old room. I missed it already. The room was long and narrow with bright yellow walls. Some of my posters were still hanging up. My desk stood in front of the window between 2 twin beds where Molly and I had spent many sleepovers. No room for sleepovers now, I thought, in my tiny sewing room. And then I scolded myself. "Don't be bitter, Britt. You'll get your room back when he leaves." Ethan pulled out the desk chair and sat down on it. He set Mr. Bad Boy on his lap. I dropped to the floor, settling onto the white shag carpet, and leaned my back against the wall. "Don't laugh too hard," Ethan said. "You'll hurt yourself." "No problem," I said. "If you need me to explain any of the jokes, just let me know," he said. I rolled my eyes. "Just do your act, okay?" Mr. Bad Boy grinned at me. His eyes opened wide. He had such an ugly smile, totally evil. "Brittany, is that your face, or did you forget to take out the garbage?" the dummy said. His voice was a shrill rasp. "Be nice," Ethan scolded the dummy. "That's my cousin." The dummy leaned toward me. "Brittany, something just reminded me of the banana I had for breakfast." "Oh yeah, your nose." The dummy tossed back its head and let out a long donkey laugh. "I'm a bad boy." "Is this your act?" I asked Ethan. He shook his head. Sometimes Mr. Bad Boy doesn't cooperate. Yeah, right, I muttered. Be good, Ethan scolded the dummy. I like your long hair, Mr. Bad Boy said to me. Too bad it's all growing on your back. I burst out laughing. The joke was terrible, but Ethan was a really good ventriloquist. I couldn't see his lips move at all. Mr. Bad Boy, please, Ethan pleaded. Be nice to Brittany. The dummy's eyes stared into mine. I know we've just met, he said in a harsh, raspy tone. But I'm a very romantic dude, and I have 3 little words I'm dying to say to you. 3 little words? I asked. Mr. Bad Boy nodded. Yeah, take a bath. I couldn't help myself. I laughed again. I have to admit, I love rude jokes. I guess maybe it's because I'm always so nice. Is that your face? Mr. Bad Boy asked, or are you standing on your head? I groaned. Don't blame me for these jokes, Ethan replied. Blame Mr. Bad Boy. He turned to the dummy. You're not very nice, he told it. Then stop putting words in my mouth, Mr. Bad Boy said. That made me laugh too. I'm a bad boy, Mr. Bad Boy exclaimed. You're an awesome ventriloquist, I told Ethan. How did you learn to do that? Ethan set Mr. Bad Boy down on the bed and walked over to me. He shrugged. I don't know, just practice, I guess. I slapped Ethan a high five. Well, good work, dude. I really think you're talented. And then I gasped, because across the room, Mr. Bad Boy turned his head to me and opened his mouth in an ugly laugh. Chapter 8. How did you do that? I cried. Ethan's smile faded. I didn't do it, he said. He took his hand out of his pocket and pointed to Mr. Bad Boy. He did. I frowned at him. Can't you ever be serious? I am serious, he insisted. I was trying to be nice to Ethan, but he always had to act like a jerk. I decided to give it one more try. You know, everyone in my school has to do 1 hour of public service, I said. That bites, Ethan said. Listen to me, I snapped. I've got a good idea for you. I'm going to give a painting lesson at my great-aunt's retirement home. Maybe you could come too and do a funny act with Mr. Bad Boy. I bet they'd love it. Cool, Ethan replied. Yeah, thanks. Maybe I'll practice some new jokes with him. Good. Your jokes are funny, but you need some that aren't so nasty, I said. I heard a rustling sound from the bed. Over Ethan's shoulder, I saw the dummy raise its head again. It opened its mouth and let out a long burp. I laughed. That's pretty good, Ethan, I said. Come on, for real. How did you do that? I'm telling the truth, Ethan said in a whisper. I didn't do it. He grabbed my arm. Please, believe me, Brittany. Sometimes it's like he comes to life or something. I pulled my arm away. Yeah, right, and monkeys can fly to the moon. But then I saw that the kid was trembling. On the other side of the bedroom, Mr. Bad Boy laughed again, a high donkey bray. I almost fell for it, but then I remembered all the dumb tricks Ethan played on me last time he visited. He was a total trickster. He just loved making me look dumb. No way I believe you, I said, so stop it. Give me a break. I'm trying hard to be your friend, Ethan. I want to make you feel at home here. Big whoop, the dummy chimed in from the bed. I grabbed Ethan by the shoulders. Tell me the truth, I said. How are you doing that? He lowered his head. His shoulders shook. I thought he might have tears in his eyes. I am telling the truth, he whispered. This time you've got to believe me, Brittany. Before I could answer, I saw the dummy raise its head. The mouth worked up and down. I could hear the click of the wooden lips. And then the dummy screamed, I'm alive! Don't you get it, Brittany? I'm alive! Ethan grabbed my arm and held on tight. Help me, please, he cried. I don't know what to do. Chapter 9. I laughed. I remembered Ethan pretending to break his leg during his last visit. I totally panicked and called 911. After that, he made fun of me for days. No way I was falling for this cheap joke. Nice try, I said. Good acting job, Ethan. But do you really think I'm a total sucker? He didn't answer. Instead, he stamped down as hard as he could on my foot. I let out a cry and hopped backward till I hit the wall. You jerk, that's not funny, I screamed, and that stupid dummy doesn't scare me. I waited for Mr. Bad Boy to laugh again or say something rude, but he didn't move. He was just a dumb puppet. I turned away from my bratty cousin. I still had some things to carry down to my new bedroom. I gazed at my framed Skullboy poster. It showed them rocking on stage at Radio City Music Hall in New York. It was autographed by every member of the band. Buzzy is my favorite band member, and he looks awesome in this poster with his shirt off and both fists pumping the air and all his tattoos showing. I grabbed the edges of the frame and carefully started to lift it off the wall. Brittany, Ethan said, I think you'd better leave that poster up here in my room. Excuse me, I said. You're kidding, right? Skullboy's Mr. Bad Boy's favorite band, Ethan said. Sorry, he loses, I said. It's my favorite band too, and I'm hanging this in my room. Ethan tried to pull my hand off the poster frame. Please, Brittany, he said in a tiny voice. What is your problem? I snapped. I want to keep Mr. Bad Boy happy, Ethan replied. If I do something he doesn't like, he might hurt me. Ethan had this terrified look on his face. He really was a good actor. Tough cheese, I said. Tell you what, sit Mr. Bad Boy down at the laptop, let him go online, and order his own poster. That time I made Ethan laugh. Come on, you two, Mom called from downstairs. Dinner's on the table. 1 minute, I shouted. I lifted the poster off the wall and carried it down to my new room. I didn't have much wall space, but the poster fit on the wall above my desk. I carefully nailed in a picture hook and hung it next to my favorite picture, an oil painting I did of Phoebe, our old dog who died last year. I missed Phoebe. The painting made me sad, but it was definitely my best painting, a nice way to remember her. I made sure the Skullboy poster hung straight. Then I hurried down to dinner. Mom had dropped a plastic jug of apple cider. She was on her knees on the kitchen floor, mopping up the spill. I can't believe I dropped that, she muttered. I grabbed some paper towels and helped her dry the floor. She handed me the half-empty cider jug. You'd better carry it to the table, she said. I'd drop my head if it wasn't glued on. I don't believe it, I said. We're eating in the dining room? We never eat in the dining room unless company is coming. I thought we'd make it a special celebration because of Ethan, Mom said. Dad was already at the table, spreading his napkin over his lap. Dad looks like he comes from another family. He's very tall and skinny as a scarecrow, and he has short, white blonde hair and furry, white blonde eyebrows that move up and down over his blue eyes like caterpillars. Mom calls him her blonde freak. Dad thinks that's hilarious. In front of him sat Mom's famous roast chicken on a blue platter, waiting to be carved. And next to it, a big bowl of mashed potatoes and bowls of applesauce and string beans. A feast. How are you and your cousin getting along? Dad asked. Peachy, I said. Before I could say more, Ethan stepped into the room with Mr. Bad Boy slung over his shoulder. Mom pointed to the chair at the end of the table. Why don't you sit there, Ethan, next to me, she said. She smiled at him. Let's all sit down and get to know one another. Ethan hesitated. He looked quickly around the table. But you didn't set a place for Mr. Bad Boy, he said. Mom and Dad exchanged glances. Dad shrugged. We can set a place for him across from you, Mom told Ethan, next to Brittany. She pulled out a placemat and napkin and set them on the table. Then she hurried into the kitchen to get silverware. Ethan placed the dummy in its chair, then walked around the table and sat down. Dad chuckled. Do we have to serve him dinner? Suddenly, Mr. Bad Boy's eyes popped open wide and he rasped, I'd rather eat roadkill. I burst out laughing. Let's face it, Ethan really cracks me up. Dad glared at me. Don't laugh at that, Britt. Your mom worked really hard on this dinner. Huh? Me? I cried. I didn't say it. He did. I gave the dummy a shove. Then I took a long sip of milk. Shouldn't she pluck the chicken before she cooks it? Mr. Bad Boy cried. I started to laugh and choked. Milk came spurting out of my nose. That made Ethan and me both laugh even harder. I couldn't stop choking and laughed. I couldn't stop choking and laughing. Enough, Britt, Dad shouted. It's not funny. Mom entered the room and sat down. What's not funny? She asked. Brittany decided to act like a clown tonight, Dad said, frowning. Why are you picking on me? I cried. It's not my fault. Ethan, help yourself to some mashed potatoes, Mom said, pushing the bowl to me. She turned to Ethan. Are you excited to have a big new room of your own? Before Ethan could answer, Mr. Bad Boy chimed in. I'm so excited I just peed my pants. I couldn't help it. I burst out laughing. The mashed potato spoon fell from my hand. A big glob of potatoes sailed across the table and smacked the front of Dad's shirt. I watched the potatoes slide into Dad's shirt pocket, and that made me laugh so hard I couldn't catch my breath. Brittany, maybe you'd better leave the table and calm down, Mom said. Dad glared at me angrily. You're really asking for trouble, he said. Me? Why me? I managed to choke out. It's not my fault. Just settle down and eat your dinner, Mom said. It all looks delicious, Dad said. Once again, Mr. Bad Boy's mouth worked up and down, and he rasped, I throw up better food than this. Chapter 10. At school the next morning, I found Molly at her table in the back of the art room working on her new project. Molly is even more intense about painting than I am. She has some cool ideas. She dreams up scenes on imaginary planets and paints them. Then she downloads photos of movie and music stars off the internet, and she prints them out and adds them to her paintings. They're hard to describe, but Mr. Villa, our art teacher, was really excited about them. He said Molly should do at least a dozen, and maybe he could get her a show in a gallery somewhere. I keep trying to get her to paint one with Buzzy from Skullboy, but she says she hates Buzzy's looks. She says she hates everything about him. Wow. So far it hasn't ruined our friendship. I'm sure one of these days I can convince her she's totally wrong. I pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. Hey, Molly, I said. I like the purple and green sky. Way cool. I'd like to point out that in the theme park of Horrorland, purple and green is the colors of all the horrors there, the employees and all that. She looked up from her painting. Britt, how come you were always so late? How come you were so late this morning? Ethan, of course, I said. I picked up a clean paintbrush and pretended to stab myself with the handle. Ack! He's a cutie pie, Molly said sarcastically, adding brush strokes to a clump of purple trees. Mom made pancakes for breakfast, I said. You know, Ethan's first day of school. Everything has to be special for Ethan. And you know what that creep did? I slammed the paintbrush down on the table. He made me laugh, and I squirted maple syrup in my hair and on my t-shirt. I had to go shampoo my hair and change. Now I'm in major trouble with Mrs. Haggerty for being late. I could kill that brat. So things are going well, Molly joked. Not funny, I muttered. How come he's going to school here? Molly asked, concentrating on her trees. Because no one knows how long he'll be living with us. Dad dropped him off at the elementary school this morning. I have to wait around till 3:30 to pick him up. Molly sneered. Did he bring that ugly dummy to school with him? No, I said. He told us Mr. Bad Boy likes to sleep late. He's totally mental, Molly says. Does he believe it's alive or something? The little clown is trying to make me believe it's alive, I said. What a joke. Molly narrowed her eyes at me. So you don't believe it? Huh? Believe Mr. Bad Boy's alive? I said, of course not. That night, I had dinner at Molly's house. Her dad was off on another long trip. Margie, the housekeeper, who always stays with Molly when her dad is away, ordered us a pepperoni pizza and a couple of salads, and we had ice cream pops for dessert. Was I happy? Well, yes, pepperoni is my favorite, but mainly I didn't have to sit across the table from Ethan. After dinner, Molly and I were in front of her laptop, checking out the latest gossip on Faceplace, our school's message board. Molly's bedroom is almost as small as my new room. She's covered one whole wall from floor to ceiling with her paintings, and it looks really awesome. Guess who wants to bring his dummy to school tomorrow? I asked. Molly shook her head. Doesn't he care that kids will think he's a geek? I shrugged. I don't get it. Guess he just wants attention. My dad says he's seen Ethan's dummy before, Molly says. He just can't remember where. Let's not talk about it, I muttered. I glanced at the clock. Almost 8:30. I'd better go home and write that essay, I said. I'm already on Mrs. Haggerty's bad list. Whoa, check this out, Molly said, eyes bulging at the laptop screen. Cindy Siegel's photos from her party last week. Oh, wow, I can't believe she put these online. If her parents ever saw them. I ended up spending another hour at Molly's. Then I hurried home to write the essay. It was due tomorrow, and I knew I couldn't afford to mess up. Mom and Dad were in the den, watching a movie on TV. The house smelled of popcorn. They had popcorn almost every night. They say it's low-calorie, but they eat huge bowls of it. I started up the stairs to the attic, then remembered it wasn't my room anymore. So I turned around, made my way down the hall, and stepped into the little sewing room. I flashed on the ceiling light and gasped. Oh, no. My poster. My Skullboy poster. The glass frame was cracked and shattered. I saw jagged shards of glass on the floor. I stood frozen in the doorway, unable to take another step into the room. My eyes stared at the shattered glass, and then I saw the long rip down the middle of the poster. It had been torn in half, and Buzzy's face, it was gone, torn off the poster. My heart pounded in my chest. I suddenly felt cold all over, as if the room had turned to ice. I blinked several times, trying to force the sight away. And then my eyes stopped on the painting of Phoebe. I let out another gasp when I saw the red mustache smeared on the dog's snout, and splashes of red paint covering the dog's eyes. Ow! I was squeezing my fists so tight that my fingernails were digging into my palms. I took a deep breath, then another, but I couldn't calm down. This is the last straw, Ethan, I muttered through my gritted teeth. This isn't funny, this is mean and vicious. I spun around and started toward the attic stairs. What did I plan to do? I don't know. I couldn't think straight. The blotchy red mustache stayed in front of my eyes. I was actually seeing red. I wanted to tear Ethan in half, just the way he tore my poster. I stomped up the stairs. My hands were still balled into tight fists. Too far, I muttered. This time you went too far. I burst into the room, dark except for the pale, low light from a tiny nightlight down the floor. I nearly tripped over the pile of dirty clothes Ethan had dropped in the middle of the carpet. Kicking a pair of jeans out of my way, I stormed up to Ethan's bed. Ethan? It took a while for my eyes to focus in the dim gray light, and then I saw the dummy stretched out on the bed, his head resting on the pillow. Ethan? Not there. Ethan was not in the bed. Huh? I heard the shower going downstairs in the bathroom. Ethan must be in the shower, I realized. I stood frozen for a moment, clenching and unclenching my fists, and then I jumped back as the dummy moved. The head jerked. Mr. Bad Boy sat up quickly. The eyes blinked open with a wooden click. The ugly dummy turned its stare on me and uttered in a hoarse whisper, "I don't like you, Brittany."